Paris, the most touristed city in the world. Many people see it as the dream vacation. It is a lovely, beautiful city.
You go to Paris, the city of lights. So much history, culture, art, food, common grace.
Behind the big and beautiful walls, ancient and so marvelous, so many people who are dying far away from the gospel.
If we're talking about the evangelical church, there are more evangelical Christians in Dallas and more churches in Dallas, Texas, than there are in the whole of France. So what you're talking about is a number that's much less than 1% evangelical.
We consider ourselves to be free and autonomous, which on the surface sounds like a great thing, but actually can leave you feeling very disconnected, very alone.
France should have been a thriving centre for the gospel. We were persecuted out of existence.
And the gospel itself was chased out of France. From that point forward, France has been a mission field. When I was first approached about the idea of missionaries going to France or to Paris, I thought, what a waste of the church's resources. What a misguided work. What a cop-out. Missionaries don't go to Paris. We go to the back corners of the world. We go suffer in the desert.
Well, we meet in a cinema.
Because it's the only place where we could find to meet.
Imagine the closet that some people have that goes underneath their stairs. That space, that's the size of our closet that we keep everything we use on a Sunday morning. And every morning there's a team of people who comes, empties out the closet, puts everything where it goes.
We all live like birds on a branch. We come as a church family on the branch on the Sunday morning for 2 hours, and then we leave the tree because it's not ours.
In the States, a lot of churches are going to start in a school. That is totally against French understanding of separation of church and state.
God gave us favor with the cinema owners.
The guy that's running it is Catholic and was really excited to be able to have these Protestants there.
The strategic element of this specific cinema, location and how it's known, was not understood till afterwards. It's right across the street from the major train station.
We're amazed about what the Lord is doing through the Église Saint-Lazare, that's the name of the church, which we planted a few years ago. What I find really encouraging is all about the way the Lord has drawn to himself people from so many different backgrounds.
Students from different universities all over the world that are part of our church. There's people from sub-Saharan Africa, people from persecuted countries that fled those countries because they believed in Jesus and have come here to learn French and follow Jesus freely.
So this is amazing for me because I'm quite a spectator of what the Lord is doing, and I love the singing, and sometimes I shut my mouth and I listen to all the different people singing, and I recognize the voices, and I see that actually this guy and this couple and this family, humanly speaking, they would have never been together in normal human life. And it's the way people sing together, but it's also in the way they do silence in order to be able to listen to the word. Because they're thirsty of the word. We have to dash off quite quickly after the service. It is a big hindrance. We don't have a place from where to radiate.
new does not necessarily mean good. That's going to be responded with a lot of skepticism.
That can actually be a stumbling block for us as Protestants, for us that are not high church. We're not trying to just repeat a religion. We're trying to get at the actuality, the realness of something. I try to always frame our faith not as some American entity coming in, which the French government has tried to frame it that way, but to frame it as, no. You guys came up with the Protestant Reformation. I read your writers when I was in seminary. And so there's a rich heritage here that was obliterated through persecution and injustice that deserves to be brought out.
The Reformation breaks out in the 16th century. So Martin Luther in Germany, and significantly John Calvin in France. John Calvin came to the Sorbonne. He came to train to be a lawyer. He came into contact with the Christian gospel at that point, and particularly the Reformed gospel that was coming across the border from Germany. And he was like soundly converted, convinced by the doctrines of grace, and started on a completely different career path to become a church minister and to be committed to the gospel of God in France. That didn't go on down well with the establishment, with the Catholic Church especially, and so he essentially had to flee Paris and via Strasbourg found his way to Geneva. Part of Calvin's mission when he was in Geneva was sending church planters back to France. It's just fascinating the number of people he sent back to France to plant churches.
I'm not trying to pit Protestantism against Catholicism, though I think there's some really important differences. But I am trying to talk about the actual gospel that's being taught, which was clearly not being taught in the Catholic Church in the 1600s.
The political powers and the religious powers combined together to persecute and snuff out the Protestant Church.
When they revoked the Edict of Nantes, Protestantism became illegal.
There was a thing called the Massacre of Saint Bartholomew, where essentially there people were allowed to go into the streets and kill Protestants.
And they were basically all chased from the country, and you were left with maybe 0.01% of the population that would have been Protestant.
There are some lonely wolves and cowboys who have come to the area, and by God's grace, we have seen some fruits. And I don't want to be too harsh on that. But in the same time, since we're trying to do hard, long-suffering work, they should be people who are ready to stay for long term. Just cast their roots in the territory, to love more and more the French culture and perhaps to forget a little bit of the American culture.
We knew if we were going to be able to have any kind of longevity and real ministry impact, that wasn't going to take place in a couple years. That was going to take time.
Sois avec nous cet après-midi et bénis. Amen. Amen.
Bon appétit.
People all over the world, they don't trust the missionary, but if you can live with them, suffer with them, endure with them, there's a credibility that the Lord builds up in the missionary. All the glamour of moving to Paris goes away very quickly when you're a foreign missionary and you realize, man, in order to understand this place and have community and have friends, I have to learn this language. And learning a language is very difficult. And that language is like a portal into the culture that's going to help me love the people and connect with the people in a deeper way.
France really sees itself through the lens of its language. I heard somebody once say that the French language is like the American flag to Americans. It's important to speak it well, or at least try, and to show that you do. It shows your respect for the culture and for the people. It's a way of incarnational ministry.
It is hard. It's hard.
Avec peine que tu en tiendras la nourriture tous les jours de ta vie. Il te produira des chardons et des...
Somebody asked, well, why are you guys in France? My husband's a pastor. What's that? What's a pastor? Or how are you guys married? Because their only reference is a priest.
France always saw itself as the oldest daughter of the church. So if Rome is the mother, then France is the oldest daughter. It had its special place in the Catholic Church. And so France has always been a massively Catholic country from that point of view. So the overthrow of the French Revolution was an overthrow of the monarchy. So they cut the king's heads off, an overthrow of the nobility, and an overthrow of the Catholic Church. They wanted to get rid of ecclesial authority. They wanted to get rid of any sense of obedience to anybody, anywhere.
The rejection of the Catholic Church during the French Revolution, the cutting off of the head of the king as a symbolic effort to show that we do not want God's representative reigning over us. We're done with that.
Revolution has shaped everybody, whether you like it or not in France. A kind of pride that makes you think that you can give lessons to the whole world because of the French Revolution that got rid of all the tyranny. Marchons, marchons, qu'un sang impur abreuve nos sillons. That's the last words of the Marseillaise, which is sung at every football, soccer game or whatever. Walk, walk, let us in impure blood feed our soil. Revolutionary.
Welcome to HQ. This whole thing folds out into a bed. So you pull right here. This is specialty made.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Oh, wow. And so everything stays on the desk.
That's amazing. It's so cool.
There we go.
The mother-in-law suite.
That's right. That's right. She keeps her clothes up here.
I think the terminology of being missional is very helpful for the American church in the last decades.
Christians should be missional.
That's right. We want Christians to be actively thinking about how to reach the people in their lives with the gospel and to live in such a way that's more possible. But I think the word missionary has a place, and an important place, because we're talking about something that is very different, that requires, in a sense, different resources and maybe even different skill sets, we could say, to leave a home country or home place and a home culture to then adapt and learn another one and to integrate into that and to be able to communicate the same true gospel in a different culture and language that's going to speak to those people's history and spiritual longings.
So obviously we're not French, but we are trying to embrace French culture, French language, and even understand more context and history. I do think missionaries should embed and embody as much as possible, but God's made me who I am, and my native language is English, and I'm gonna be an American living here. At the same time, trying to learn French language, love French history, culture, context.
Paul says, I've become all things to all people so that I might win them. He's not saying I'm becoming totally who they are. He's just meeting them where they're at. Contextualization is like threading the needle. You can either under-contextualize, which means you don't do enough due diligence to understand the people and the culture and the air that's breathed in Paris, or you over-contextualize, where you begin to compromise on the gospel message, the word of God, to make it more attractive. Under or over-contextualization both lead to less clarity about who Jesus is.
When we tell people as Americans why we're in France, I'll always say, well, my husband's here to start English-speaking churches around Paris. Then I say, we're meeting in a cafe. It's a conversation starter.
So our relationship with the cafe is they don't charge us rent, so we basically buy as much as we can, which is a win for them. It's also a win that we can bless people here because we have a church tab.
When we initially came in 2018, we met with a French-American pastor, and he put out a map of Paris, and he said to us, look at this area right here of Paris. It's 2 million people, and there is not one gospel preaching, not one evangelical church in this whole area.
Good to have you all here. Welcome to Emmanuel International Church, Rive Gauche. And my name is John Hugh Tate. It's my honor to serve as pastor here. We're very thankful that y'all are here today.
So generally, because of our location, because we're close to a university, we average the people who walk in the door, I would say 50% of them are people who are between the ages of 20 and 35.
I mean, definitely in double digits in terms of countries represented. Definitely U.S. and French, but U.S. would be the minority. It's also Liberia, Nigeria, Philippines, Venezuela, in UK, France, India, South Africa, Australia.
Means outside talking with his buddies, always be kind to them, because one of his buddies emphasized that he's Muslim and that his name's Ishmael, and I love that. And so he just, that we can worship here and that the Lord's using this time and this space in ways that we know not.
In Paris, you have a huge expat community, and they're not able to worship in French at a French-speaking church. So they're coming together and they're worshiping in that second or third or fourth language, which happens to be English, and they're able to grow in their faith.
I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world.
We want to disciple them well, even if they're here for 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, because almost everybody who is here and moving on is moving to another big city or going back to their home country. Our reach, being in Paris, is much bigger than just our local neighborhood.
You've had small, tiny pockets of Protestantism, generations, hundreds of years. But it was after World War II that many of the soldiers who came and fought in France and fought alongside the French, and they came home and they said, oh my gosh, this place is godless. We need to send people there to proclaim Jesus.
It's they call it Latin night. So you get the challenge is preaching in here. I mean, it's a different.
How you preach in a way that's not.
You just got so much distraction. Yeah. I mean, I'm right there, and like often is the case, there's one church that wants to plant other churches. The one church that we would call our mother church has been here since, I believe, 1963, and it was, I mean, for years, kind of the lone English-speaking expat diplomat army, church. But then with Paris changing too, and just the need for more churches. We're planting independent churches that we want to be independent, but that can take time. I really argue the need for English language churches in global cities. I mean, there are 3 million people within the 11 million who speak English. It is more of a niche ministry, but the niche ministry is growing.
In the evangelical missions world, primarily, in the West, a little bit of a hesitance to embrace the international English-speaking church. I think there's an idea that it's kind of this social club of expats, or maybe the church is so kind of interdenominational that there's not a real confessional identity in the church. I think some of those concerns are somewhat valid, but if we could look at international English-speaking churches as an opportunity, we can mobilize from healthy churches here, qualified pastors and missionaries to go to these global cities and reach the nations through the language of English. What an incredible assignment.
I saw this really funny picture, and it said if the Filipinos were in charge of the Last Supper. I'll have to find it, and it has the Last Supper table, but it's huge with food everywhere. I'll have to find it, and I'll show you next week.
You can be quite educated, quite cultured, affluent, and absolutely lost. And that was the case of a number of people that come to Jesus in the Gospels who seem to have it all together on the outside, but were the furthest from the kingdom of God. And so what is actual need? Are we talking about physical need, economic needs, social needs? Is that what the gospel is primarily about?
One of the principal characteristics of the world in which we live now, sometimes called the postmodern world, is that it's a world marked by a lack of stable external authorities. Religion, for example, or family, or even nation or people. These are all external authorities that are in some level of chaos. And that means we live in a world in some ways where we're swimming in a sea of lack of meaning.
So Jean-Paul Sartre, a famous humanist and atheist and existentialist, he wrote in France L'existence précède l'essence. L'existence, existence, comes before essence, and essence is something that would mean what it means to be a human being, or purpose, or sense.
Christianity would say, well, human beings have a nature. We're made in the image of God. And to be free is to be able to act in accordance with that nature without let or hindrance. So freedom for the Christian is not the freedom to choose between A and B. It is the freedom to pursue God without anything getting in the way.
Jean-Paul Sartre and all of the humanists and existentialists say that's not true. What happens is we come into existence, and it's up to each one of us to create our own essence, our own purpose, our own sense. And that changes everything. All of a sudden, you're no longer responsible to or accountable to a God or to a way things are. And there's nothing you can do or I can do or anybody can say to us that would prevent us doing that. And so there are no limits. May 1968 is what we call in France just Mai 68. It's so important that you just call it by the name of the month and the year. There was a riot at the Sorbonne. That riot was to do with restrictions that people felt in terms of their ability to express themselves as sexual beings. Essentially, the boys wanted to go into the girls' dorms, but it turned into a sexual revolution that totally transformed how people see any restriction on the liberty that people felt that they ought to have. There were slogans that were associated with that movement. For example, one of them was, "Il est interdit d'interdire." It's forbidden to forbid. You can apply that to nearly anything that's happening today. And telling anybody that they can't do what they feel they ought to do, or they can't be who they feel they ought to be, is actually a form of oppression. And it's forbidden to forbid.
The world is more urbanized than it even realizes. The tension of the city is with us now. If you're in a small town, in a village, no matter where you are, if you have a phone, you're being shaped and influenced by urban ideas. The posture of Christians towards cities is usually, we need to resist the cities at all costs because they're just a cesspool of negative influence, and everything bad about the culture is from the city. Like, it's busy, there's crime, it's dangerous. Or it's like, okay, I'm gonna go live in the city for a season because I have a job. Like, I'm gonna go into the city, I'm gonna use it, but I don't really care about the city. Or there's the Christian who goes to the city, relatively unrooted, maybe not discipled in a local church, and the ways of the city overtakes them. And so they begin to relativize their faith.
Reaching global cities with the gospel is very much in line with how God has worked in the history of the world. Very much in line with even the thinking of Paul in the New Testament. Very much in line with God's plan of redemption.
And so the urban moment is here, and Christians don't have a choice. You can't retreat, you can't resist, you certainly can't relativize. And I'm not saying everyone should just like cities, but I think if you love people, God can change your heart about the place they've made.
Neglecting the city centers, neglecting the culture-making centers is running away from the battle lines. It's running away from the place where the war needs to be fought. I'm using kind of military language, but in the sense that Paul uses it in Ephesians 6. Luther said that if you only fight where it's easy, you're not fighting at all. I think we want to go to the center of the culture, right where the culture is at its most creative, right where the culture is its most hostile, be right there.
When you think about what it means to be human, I think human beings, we are creatures who crave meaning. It's actually the great German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche makes this comment about suffering. He says that it is not suffering that is unbearable, it is meaningless suffering that is unbearable. Now, when you think about that, and then you think about something like the death of God or a loss of faith in God, what did God traditionally do for people? God traditionally gave their lives meaning, gave their lives purpose. If you get rid of God, then you get rid of that source of meaning. Now, that may initially sound like liberation, but then when you come to reflect on it, you realize, well, if I've got rid of God, then in some ways I need to fulfill the role of God myself. I have to come up with my own meaning. I have to make myself significant. That's a huge, terrifying, lonely burden to bear.
There's also this belief that the Western post-Christian ideology would spread throughout the world. And in France, it's very strong. So we think that we've already found the right way to be human, and a strong feeling that we should export this big eschatological hope throughout the world.
President Macron, as a reaction against the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the States, had enshrined the right to abortion in the French Constitution.
780 contre 72.
There's a huge ceremony at the Palace of Versailles. There was projections onto the Eiffel Tower where they had "My Body, My Choice" in English.
He had a appalling discourse about this is the good news of France, the gospel of France, for all the women throughout the world. Let them hear where we are going.
Lorsque le droit à l'avortement sera devenu enfin universel, nous nous souviendrons, tout a commencé ce jour-là. Ce 8 mars 2024, où la France a été grande, parce qu'elle a voulu l'être pour toutes les femmes, universellement. Alors merci. Vive la République et vive la France.
I think that sometimes there's this idea that missionaries can kind of operate outside of the natural frameworks that God's given us.
Much of the, I would say, the modern missions movement, at least over the last 100 years or so, has made sort of the missionary the end of missions. But the problem is the gospel needs to take root in disciples who are then discipled in churches.
The local church is the manifestation of the gospel. You cannot read the New Testament scriptures and think that being a Christian means just you and Jesus. When people come to Jesus, they also come to his people, to the church.
We sort of make the Great Commission reductionistic. We make it all about individuals who evangelize. But actually, in the Great Commission, the church is actually embedded into that commission. If you were to start in Matthew 16, Matthew 18, there's the ecclesiology that build towards this moment where Jesus says, okay, all authority has been given to me. Now, you churches, go into all the nations. It's actually disciples who belong to a covenant community.
The local church is at the start of the mission, so churches plant churches. And the goal of mission is the planting of a new church. It's the church that Jesus gives himself for. And it's the church that Jesus wants to build. And it's the church that the gates of hell will not prevail against.
Still get the taste of Atlanta. That's right. I came here and I was like, oh, I'm going to get really into coffee from the French. And in fact, the French made coffee, in my opinion, that was so awful that I was like, I have to learn how to make my own coffee because I can't do this. I need some coffee.
So. Now you drink coffee and then you go to the cafe and have coffee. I mean, it hits you at really random times. Like I was walking my daughter to school and I'm crossing the road and I'm like, why am I here? This is crazy. Like why? I'm an American. I never even dreamed of being in Paris. And just like a normal everyday morning is walking my kid to the school that's off Rue de Martyrs, just speaking French. It's just weird.
I'm not here to say Paris isn't beautiful and that we aren't thankful to be here. But gosh, it is not easy.
Almost everyone in our congregation talks about how lonely it is to be in Paris, and they talk how hard it is to make friends.
Yeah, loneliness is an epidemic here.
I mean, the enemy hates the gospel going to places where it has not gone. So he's going to wage a full-on assault on the missionary mind. He wants to do everything he can to break the missionary down so that they'll quit and give up.
And certainly there's been a number of American missionaries that have had that experience. They've come across to France to do ministry. They stick it out for 2 years or 3 years because it's difficult, because it's slow, because you don't see much obvious fruit very quickly. People get discouraged, people go home.
Right now, France the percentage would be 0.8 or near 1% evangelical, gospel-believing Christians. That's the highest it's been in 400 years.
What do you guys think of when you survey that situation?
Powerless.
You feel powerless.
Mm-hmm. Overwhelmed.
Because there's not even, they're still angry. Like, there's still a lot of, it's not even like they are lost, obviously, but they want nothing to do with those answers. There's still a generational kind of anger and animosity towards the church because of the history that exists with the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
The majority of people, like, you say anything about what we do, and there's very little, either little interest or...
Yeah, that's a conversation ender pretty quick. What do you do, Pastor?
So you always kind of open up like, okay, God, is this the direction you want us to go? I mean, and that's the missionary element too. Like, is God going to provide a way for us to continue to live here?
What we've asked people to pray many times, and we would ask you guys to pray, is that you'd pray that people's eyes would be opened, that there would actually be a spiritual hunger and thirst.
So what kind of church is appropriate for the Fifth? That's the kind of question that every church planter asks when they come to a new place. There's 80,000 students every day that come through the Fifth. There's 60,000 plus people who live here in the Fifth. The people who come here, the families that come here, they come here because the schools. The young professionals stay here because it's just a great place to live. Any number of things that the culture offering here in the Fifth is unsurpassed. And there's no evangelical church in the 5th arrondissement in Paris. So no church there to serve that community. Even in the existential quest that Jean-Paul Sartre was pursuing, he was looking for truth and beauty and goodness. He was looking in the wrong place, but he was looking for truth, beauty and goodness. And so the Bible is full of truth and beauty and goodness, the transcendental values that every human being deep down is looking for. And so we thought to ourselves, we want to kind of have a church that captures something of that. So what does it look like to redeem the pursuit of truth? I think it means presenting people with the Bible, getting to grapple with the truth of the Bible, and letting the Bible do its work in people's minds and hearts. What does it look like to pursue goodness? It's not to do anything. It's just because we've learned how to be good at the person who is the most good in the universe. Now, France is a beautiful country, Paris is a beautiful city, but the beauty that we tend to pursue tends to be very fleeting and very superficial. God has created humankind in His image, and He's made humanity beautiful. And it doesn't matter whether that person has the cultural definition of beauty on the surface. That person is beautiful because of the image of God, because that is what's truly beautiful in this world. It's more beautiful than the Eiffel Tower, it's more beautiful than the Arc de Triomphe, it's more beautiful than Notre Dame and the Seine. The most beautiful thing you'll see in Paris is a human being made in the image of God. That's the kind of church that the 5th, I think, will resonate with, and that's the kind of church we're trying to plant.
How was school?
Good.
Yeah? What do you like learning in school? What's your favorite thing to learn?
I like writing notes.
No.
We have a church that believes in what we're doing.
You see your sister?
that cares for us, checks in on us, is encouraging, prays for us. I can't tell you how important that is.
The care team that prays for you guys wanted to send a little care package to y'all.
That's
so,
sweet.
yeah, there you go.
Very cool.
Hey,
I don't know what's in it. But,
we're reading a book right now, and jelly beans. These are jelly beans. I don't think they've ever had jelly beans.
Hey.
You guys say a big thank you.
Thank you.
What does it taste like?
Oh, that's cherry.
Very good. But he continues to provide in strange ways. Okay, which one should I try? Those moments, it feels like clear. Okay, we're going in the right direction. Oh, that's
Which one is the green one?
Was that another cherry?
Which one is the green one?
That one?
You can't think that you're coming to France to do an easy ministry, to get an easy gig. If you're hoping to do that, France is the wrong place to come. If you want to be a mega church pastor, don't come to France. If you want to be a celebrity pastor, don't come to France. If you want to see quick fruit easily, don't come to France. Because essentially what you're talking about in France is coming, doing ministry, praying, preaching the word, building community. It'll be slow and very difficult. And you'll not see much fruit. At the same time, what a joy. It's not the missionary graveyard that some people have said is. You can come to France, you can do ministry in France, and you can experience deep joy in the Lord and also in the ministry as you see people by ones and twos come to Christ and experience the joy of salvation.
You think of Paris redeemed and restored. What a beautiful picture. Man, I long for that for Paris. I long for that for Atlanta, for all of our cities that we're working in.
Mission doesn't start with the name of a city. Mission starts with the name of a person. And so I'm in touch with people who live in the Fifth. I'm not trying to transform the Fifth tomorrow. It's always one person at a time. It's always one need that you can answer at a time. It's always one person that you can share the gospel with at a time.
The reality of God's people gathering and scattering in and of itself evangelizes. And that's powerful. People that are being changed by the power of the gospel in biblical community will go out and want others to experience that change.
The church is not just a human association of people. The church is not a bunch of people who happen to believe the same stuff, who've got together to form a kind of lobby group. Church is a creature of God.
We need more workers in the area. We need people to help us because we are so few in this huge harvest field. We need to see these guys having training skills so that they would be replaced by 10 or 20 or 30 people that they've trained, so that the branches are numerous because they've invested in French-speaking people.
There's an abundant harvest. The fields are wide under harvest. And we're praying the Lord of the harvest to send many workers into his harvest field. And we're praying that our church will be a part of that.
We need to remember that the church doesn't have to bear the burden of success. The church has to be faithful. Success, as it comes, in whatever form it comes because God gives the increase.
France has a history. There are Christians here, but they're few and far between. They're under-resourced. There needs to be gasoline thrown on this tiny little fire.